This is an interview with Command Sergeant Major Robert Oswald Hunter. Mr. Hunter was born on January 13th, 1925 in Nokomis, Illinois. Mr. Hunter served from September 1943 to October 1st, 1973 in Italy, southern France, Germany, Austria, Korea, and Vietnam. Mr. Hunter achieved the rank of Command Sergeant Major. This interview is being done on November 26, 2013 in Fairfield, California. Mr. Hunter is the great-grandfather of a Da Vinci High School student, Petra Favorite. This interview is being conducted for the Veterans History Project at the Library of Congress as a part of Da Vinci High School's America at War project. All right, ready to begin?
Ready.
All right. What was your life like leading up to the war?
To the war? Well, I got out of high school. I was still 17 years old. That was in 1942. And so all my buddies were going in because I was one of the young guys in the class. They were all 18 and they were going into service right away. But I didn't want to enlist because I didn't want to make people mad at me. Mm-hmm. You know. So I went up to Chicago, went to work. And then as soon as I was 18, I signed up for the draft, and they called me in September.
All right. And
I went in September and took basic training down in Camp Blanding, Florida. As soon as that was over, I had a 7-day delay en route. I leave at home. I had about 4 days out of the 7 because you had to travel. And so I went over to that. That's when I went over to Italy, and it took me 28 days to get to Italy from Newport News, Virginia, on a Liberty ship.
Right.
There was about 98 ships in that convoy, so it took a while.
So what was your attitude like when you signed up for the draft?
Oh, I wanted to go. I wanted to go before that, but I didn't want to make people mad at me.
So you were eager?
Oh, yeah.
All right.
I was ready to go.
Did any of your relatives serve in the military?
No. Well, I think I had an uncle, my father's brother, in World War I.
All right.
He served, but he didn't go overseas. He went in late, and he didn't have to go overseas. The war ended, and he got out.
All right. Did the training prepare you?
Oh, yeah. That was great training.
All right.
Basic training, Camp Blanding, Florida. 30-mile marches in the sand.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
Yeah. And how difficult was it for you adjusting to the military lifestyle?
It wasn't. I wanted to be there, so.
So it was easy for you to.
Well, it wasn't easy, but you know.
You were okay with it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So the first location you were deployed was Italy?
Italy, yeah.
And how were you feeling at the time when you arrived?
Oh, that was good. Kind of wore off in that boat ride. I didn't call it a ship, that's a boat. And so, but when I got there, well, the whole bunch of us went to different units, and I was assigned to the 36th Infantry Division, which was the Texas Division. And we got there and got all our equipment and everything, and then we got assigned to the unit because they had just been shot up up in the Rapido River, not northern Italy, but central Italy. So they were back and we were replacements. So we went there, and of course, these guys were Texans. We had to salute this Lone Star flag and all that stuff. You Yankees don't know how to fight. We're going to teach you how the Texans fight. You know. But it was good, and it was a good outfit. And so when we went up online, and joined the war actually up in Anzio after the invasion, and then we went and then we started our march to Rome. And I was just a rifleman. For a while I was carrying a Browning automatic rifle, the BAR.
Yeah.
And we made our march to Rome. And then we got to Rome, and they said, that's it. So I stopped. And next day they said, we're going to march through Rome. It's been declared an open city. The Germans moved out.
I read about that.
So they moved out, and we just marched through like we were in a parade. But what was, I'll always remember this, There weren't any men there, no Italian men. They were all up in the hills fighting the Germans. The ladies along the side, we went through like in a parade, sling arms, no security, nothing, just marching through. Little old ladies on the side with a bottle of wine and a glass, and they'd pour it in that thing and hand it to you as you're going by. And the little boy was following you along, and when that glass was empty, he'd take it back, she'd fill it up. So when we came out of the other side of Rome, we were feeling pretty good.
Yeah. And what was the purpose of the march to Rome?
Well, because we were chasing the Germans. See, all the way up there, all the way up the road to Rome.
Back.
Yeah, our troops, our outfit was the first troops in Rome. And on September, it was, what was the invasion of Normandy? It was in May, wasn't it? I think. Anyway, it was 2 days before that. It was on the 4th, and theirs was on the 6th.
Oh, yeah.
And so nobody even heard of us. They got all the publicity.
Yeah. And you said you were really eager to enter this war. What were some of your motivations?
Well, I just really wanted to be a soldier. I really wanted that. And I can remember when Pearl Harbor happened. I was sitting in a restaurant and early in the morning and eating a bowl of chili, and I saw it up on a newsstand. I said, wow, we got to get them guys. So, but anyway, but I lived in this little town in Illinois, and it was a coal mine town. And everybody got out of high school, and when they came back from the war, they wanted to work in a coal mine. My dad was a coal miner. He came from England, and he was working in a coal mine in England when he was 11 years old. And he never saw daylight. They'd go down in the morning, early in the morning, never come up till dark. So anyway, I said to him, he said, what are you thinking about doing? You going on to school? I said, no, I think I'll just stay here and work in the mine. He said, over my dead body, work in the mine. So then I got interested in the service. And it was just my dream, I guess. So enjoyed that and all the service. And so when we first came under German fire, I was at outside of Anzio, was a little town of Velletri. And that was our first objective, and that's where we first got shot at. And so that's when we got the combat infantry badge. Made PFC and got the combat infantry badge as soon as we got shot at. So that was the start of it, and just went on from there.
What were some of your specific duties as a soldier?
Well, I was a rifleman. I was a BAR man, and not so much in Italy, but after we got to France, then I had different jobs. I'd get, a patrol leader and acting squad leader when squad leader gets shot or something, And but that was the highest rank I held in World War II. All through the war was a PFC. And they said, send Hunter out, he can go.
So, can you describe a typical day in basic training?
Basic training? Dark 30, up. And breakfast, quick eggs and scrambled eggs, sausage or something. And then hiking out to the training areas with full field packs. And then we had different training every day, fire to weapons, zero to weapons and fire to weapons, threw hand grenades and, got all the war stuff. And learn how to march, to learn how to walk on 30-mile hikes. And that paid off when we got to Italy. That was a long hike all the way up the road to Rome, It was about a 30-mile hike. And it was hot. It was in June. That's what it was, June. And so I can't complain about basic training. I liked it.
how did people feel about the war during the time?
World War II?
Yeah, World War II.
Oh, I mean, there weren't too many people that they had hard times. You know, they had ration of food and everything else. You know, gasoline and all that stuff. But they knew that we were in the war, and they were. Once in a while, you'd hear from somebody, like my sister said one time. She was working in a store, clothing store, and a woman was in there working closer to her. She said, "Boy, I hope this war lasts forever because I'm making a lot of money now that I didn't make before." And my sister said, "What did you say?" So I guess she ripped her up pretty bad. She said, "I got a brother over there getting shot at now. Don't tell me you want this war to continue." So, but you heard stuff like that, but not too much.
If you could, according to you, try to think about what America's feeling was towards World War II back in the day.
Well, I think we were everybody pretty well were for us. You know, I didn't hear too many complaints. Even didn't hear too many complaints from the guys that were out there doing those 30-mile marches either. You know, they were all in it. A lot of good soldiers came out of World War II.
Talking about good soldiers, did you make a lot of friends during the war?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, made a lot of friends. Still go to reunions down in Texas. They have one every year down there. See some old buddies.
Were you able to stay in contact with your family while you were in combat?
Oh, yeah. I mean, mail call. You might not get any for a week. You know, it depends where you were. And but you could send mail out as often as you wanted, and if you had time. And but I heard from them. They knew where I was all the time. Basically, somewhere in Italy, somewhere in France. You know, so.
Did you have time to do things recreationally when you were in service?
Not initially, but when the war ended, I did. Yeah. When the war ended, I said, and our outfit wasn't going to go home. The war ended in May, I guess it was, 5th of May. And so we were in Austria when the war ended. We went back into Germany, and our outfit was put up in a town of Blaubeuren, I think it was, in Germany. And so we started training again. Just like basic training or something. We're out there doing squad and attack, and all. I said, the war's over, man. So, but I played baseball in high school. I was a 3-year letterman, you know. And so they said, well, we're going to have some organized athletics in the division. We're going to have a division baseball team. And so we had tryouts. So I went to the lowest level of battalion, and I made the cut, sent me down to the regiment. I made a regimental baseball team. So I played baseball all summer, all the way till September. And our regiment won the division championship. There's a picture in there of my ball team, even in one of those.
Would you like to show it?
Well, I couldn't find it right now offhand. I'd have to look for it. So anyway, that was fine. And then I decided division was coming home in December. And I said, I'm not going back to that coal mine. I'm not going back to work for that farmer out there for $1 a day, 2 on Saturday. You know, I said, I'm not going to do that. So when I saw the first sergeant, I said, Top, I'm not going home with you. We were in Marseille, ready to go. I said, oh, I'm not going. He said, you're not? I said, no. I don't want to go because I want to stay in the Army. So I'm going to go and re-enlist. So that was my first regular Army enlistment. I was a PFC, and I went back to Germany. I stayed 2 years. Came back with a wife and a daughter. After 2 years, came back as a staff sergeant. Was an acting first sergeant most of the time because the other guys didn't want the job. So that's where I got my training as first sergeant and then later on moving up in the sergeant major job. So that was a good tour. came back to the States and went to Colorado. And mountain troops, climbing rocks, skiing in the winter. And it was good training. And that was in 47 when I came back. And went to Colorado, and worked 4 years in Colorado, became 1951, and went to Korea, and stayed a year, and then came back, and then went to Fort Riley, Kansas, first sergeant of a training company, and I went from there when they closed it out. I went back to Colorado. Colorado was a good place for me. I had my son and youngest daughter were born in Colorado. Kathy, a year older than Jeannie, on the same birth date, but she was born in Kansas. She said, "Dad, how come I was born in Kansas?" I said, "Well, we were on TDY for the summer." She said, so anyway, and then after that, went to Korea, and when I came back from Korea, I went to Fort Riley, Kansas, and then to Colorado. And then I said, well, my enlistment's coming up. I got to re-enlist. And the wife wanted to go back to Europe, maybe go to her home state or something where she lived. And I said, well, I'm going to re-enlist, so I'm going to sign up for Germany. And I'll put 2 other outfits on it that you never get, choice assignments. And I put Puerto Rico and Hawaii, to go. That's a good duty. And so got re-enlisted, and I got my orders for overseas. I went to Hawaii for 4 years. That was a great tour of duty. And there was a first sergeant in a rifle company in Hawaii. It was a great job, best job in the Army. Still today, I say the best job in the Army is a first sergeant of a rifle company.
What did you like about Hawaii so much?
Oh man, that was great. Training was good. We were in shape because we were troops. Our troops would have been called if anything happened in the Pacific. We were on that kind of alert, so we were ready to go. Did training. Most of the time was training in the mornings. Afternoon was care and cleaning of equipment, organized athletics. But when we went in the field, we went. We'd stay a week and humping, attacking hills and all this stuff. But that was a good 4-year tour. And then while I was in Hawaii, they came out with a new rank for, we were all E7s. That was the highest rank at that time, E7s. And I was the first sergeant, I was the first sergeant of a rifle company. So they came out with this rank of E8, and that was going to be for the master sergeants would get an advancement, and that's in pay and in prestige. So first go around, I made the first sergeant E8, and I finished the tour over in Hawaii, and then I went to Fort Ord, California from there. 5 years later, during that time, I guess 4 years later, I was promoted to a sergeant major, which was an E9, the highest rank. And I was a sergeant major of the training battalions, the brigade and stuff like that. And in 5 years from that, I went to Vietnam for my first tour, and stayed there a year. We didn't have any combat troops there at that time. I went as an advisor to the Vietnamese 23rd Infantry Division, and we had a unit of our own. We were advisors, but I was sergeant major and had a bird colonel for a boss, good guy, and I just kind of stayed with him most of the time. In fact, I had so many combat flights in helicopters going with him to all our areas we had up there to get an air medal. So that was another award that I normally wouldn't get as an infantry soldier, but as a sergeant major, you might do anything, So Anyway, a year later, I get back to Fort Ord. The family didn't have to move. And wife and the 4 kids, when I went to Vietnam, they would just move off post. And then when I come back, I'd move back on the base. So they had actually 15 years there, consecutive. Kids went to school, graduated from high school, junior college, everything. And so their whole life practically was there, 15 years of their life. And so 5 years later, I went back to Vietnam. But at that time, they put out a new rank that they called Command Sergeant Major. And that was specific. Your assignments would be to a command unit under a field grade officer, lieutenant colonel or a colonel. You know, you work directly with him. And your title was Command Sergeant Major, as it still is today. And so I went to the 4th Infantry Division. I was assigned to Aviation Battalion, which is something I was new for me. I said, I want a brigade, I want a battalion or a brigade in the boonies. You know, that's what I wanted. So this is my last assignment. I'm gonna retire in a few more years. And they said, well, you got to go where we send you. When you get to be a command sergeant major, you just take what you get, and you're going to go to work for a field grade officer. I said, okay. So I went to the aviation battalion, and that was a good assignment. I learned a lot there. And them young pilots coming out of school, down there like 19 years old, coming out there hanging them helicopters in the rubber trees and stuff. I had a safety officer. He'd come in. I said, what's happened, Captain? Hung 2 more in the trees. But that was a good assignment. And they stood that 4th Division down and sent it home. I was there only 3 months, I guess. And they sent that division home, but they didn't send the troops home. They scattered us out. And I went to the Americal Division. It's the 23rd Infantry Division. And there I got the job as the Command Sergeant Major of the Support Command under a bird colonel who was a really tough guy. He was a World War II vet. He was a tanker, served under Patton in World War II. He was my commander. And when I was told to report over there for an interview, I went in and knocked on the door, and he said, come on in. And I went in, here's this guy. He's got his picture in there. And I saluted him. He said, sit down, Top. I said, this guy's pretty informal, you know. And this is one of the things that I found out, that if you were going for an interview someplace and you were there 5 minutes and you figured, I can work for this guy, and it was good. That was probably the best assignment I ever had in all my service. Colonel Mack, he was great. So there I ended up with 2 more air medals for all of them, because we were going every day. He and I were flying. We went down once. We didn't get shot down, but had engine trouble, and he set that helicopter down in a clearing in the jungle. And up on a hill, there was a little village, and that's where the Viet Cong used to hang out. And there was just the colonel and I and the 2 door gunners and the crew chief and the 2 pilots. In that Huey, we went down. It was Christmas Day, because the colonel said, you know, we got troops out at every one of those fire bases. We did a support command, see. And he said, we got to go see if they got their turkey dinner for Christmas. I said, we can stay here and have ours. He said, no, we got to go. So we did, and we'd gone to 4 of them. We were on our way to our 5th one. We had 5 of them out. And that's when we went down. It was Firebase Bronco. That was the one I wanted to go to when they assigned me to Support Command. And so we're waiting and waiting. The guys were working on it, playing the crew chief. We got these 2 machine gunners that took their machine guns out of the mount and took them out and they set them up as support all around security. And the colonel had a pistol and I had a pistol, and that's all we had. And I said, reels all around security, you know. And I look up at that village and I said, man, we got to get out of here. Them guys, Viet Cong are up there and they're just looking for meat. And so we waited and waited. Nobody bothered us. And so then he said, okay, I'm going to give it a shot, but don't get in. And he cranked it up, and he got up about 150 feet, and he came banging down, just sat down again. He said, it ain't going to fly. And then he said, I'm going to call for a helicopter to come in and get the colonel. I said, whoa, wait a minute. There better be 2 seats in there. I'm going to sit in his lap because I'm leaving with him. I'm not staying there. So he said, no, we got a Huey coming in with a maintenance crew. So they came in and took us out. We got up in the air, and I said, Colonel, we still going to Bronco? He said, no, not now. We're going back to the base. So we went back and had our Christmas dinner back at the base. So that was but I did a lot of flying. There. That's the only time we ever went down. We got shot at several times, but if you get too low, then Viet Cong had come out of the bush with a shotgun and try to blow you out of the sky, of course, they would never hit us, but we were up high enough. And then for field grade officers like that, their assignments were for 6 months. And when his 6 months was up, he was leaving. And so he was a cavalryman. See, he was in armor in World War II, but they were a cavalryist. And so when he was ready to leave, I said, Colonel, I got a little get-together for you over in the mess hall. And I told the first sergeant, I said, get all the NCOs over in there. We're going to have a little deal with the colonel. So I got the band. They had the division band even in an outfit, sport command. And I told them, I said, you guys can you guys play Gary Owen? And they said, yeah, I think most of them can. I said, practice, because you're going to have to play it. So I stationed the band on, his hooch was up here on the top. We had to walk down a little ways to the mess hall. And there was a little walkway, and I had the band standing right along there. And I brought him out. And we were walking down, and he didn't even see the band, and he started playing Gary Owen. He said, how'd you do that? I said, carry on, Colonel. We're going down there for a little lunch or something. And the band was playing. He really enjoyed that. Really enjoyed it. Gary Owen. So anyway, he left, and his replacement came in. He was a tanker also. He was a bird colonel. And so that whole assignment I had with that 23rd Infantry Division was terrific under 2 real good field grade officers. And those were my last combat assignments. I get back to Fort Ord, and 2.5 years, 3 years, maybe something like that, I retired at Fort Ord. So I spent the last 15 years of my life at Fort Ord with the 2 trips to Vietnam. And well, I guess that was about the end of it. But if you want to fill in between.
Yeah, I'd love to learn more about back when you were in World War II. What were some of the difficult moments you experienced in World War II?
Well, we were in the woods one time, big trees, and the Germans started firing their 88s in there and getting tree bursts. That's no fun. See, it explodes up there, and then all the shrapnel comes down, and you guys are hiding, trying to get out of there. And that was the Haguenau Woods in France before we got to the Siegfried Line, where the Germans were in bunkers and stuff waiting. And so that was pretty tough. But other times we were just kind of, if you hear artillery coming, you just get down. But then we had firefights with the Germans. They were trying to counterattack us. And just everybody firing his weapon. Couldn't even see them sometimes. They were in grape arbors or something. They said they're out there, fire their weapons. And that was it. Never got shot. Never got wounded. Shot at and missed all the time, I guess. But, so then as soon as you come under fire, you get the combat infantry badge. You make PFC. So I got that early on. And then when I went to Korea, I got the second award of the combat infantry badge. The first sergeant rifle company. We were right up in the troops. And that's where I got the Bronze Star for valor in Korea. And I'll tell you about that as you go along.
Yeah. Back in World War II, were you aware of the German atrocities against the Jews?
Oh yeah, we knew about them. Yeah, we knew about them. My outfit didn't see any after we got into Germany, but some of those guys did. They got those camps, that they liberated camps. I never saw one. Where we went through southern Germany, and when we got to Munich, we went straight south and ended up in Austria. And got into Austria, and we stopped, and the platoon sergeant came over. He said, "Okay, the war's over." They just signed the peace. It was May the 5th, I guess. But we knew about all those things that went on, but we didn't see any of it. I didn't, anyway.
Did you ever come in contact with enemy soldiers or citizens?
Yeah, well, a lot of citizens after the war was over when I stayed over there. We did. Yeah, I had friends in there, made friends with the people, where we lived and stuff. But with soldiers, oh yeah, we took prisoners, we shot them, and they shot at us, and so that was like close combat. That was it.
Let's see. What was daily life like back in Italy?
In Italy?
Daily life.
When we were on the line, it was just combat. And we were going. We were either sitting in foxholes or we were on the road going. Because after we went through Rome, we stayed on the line for another 30 days, just continuously. And we got up to Grosseto, and they pulled us out. Those 3 divisions that made the invasion of Salerno, they pulled those 3 divisions out. And we didn't know why, and they pulled us all the way back to Salerno again, and to take amphibious training. And I said, "What are we doing this for? They already had the invasion over there, and they don't need us. Maybe they're going to send us to the Pacific," which we didn't want to do. And that's where we got the word we were going to southern France. And I didn't go on it because I got sick. Got sick in Italy when we were down on those beaches. I got what we call, I guess they call it hepatitis now or something. I had yellow jaundice. And I didn't go, and the squad leader said, "You better go to the doctor." "I'm not going to die." I couldn't eat, greasy food, go through the chow line and stuff. And I said, "I ain't going to the medics." "No, I ain't going to the medics." I went to the medics one time when I was in basic training, and I'm never going again. And he said, "What happened?" I said, "Well, I went on. I had a bad cold. I was coughing, and I went in. And they took my temperature, and they said, 'Go over to that window there, and the guy will give you something.' He gave me a shot glass like that with some clear liquid in it. It's castor oil. He said, 'Drink that down.' I drank it down. So I had a hard trip back to the company area. I was hitting every latrine along the way. So I said, "I'm not going to psychology, never." So we were out having some training, and I carried a BAR, and I went from one position to another, and I hit the ground. And squad leader came over and said, get up, you're moving." I said, "You can't get up." He said, "You're finally going to go." So he called for the medics. They came over and they hauled me away. And I was in the hospital about 3 months. I turned like a Chinaman, all yellow, eyes yellow. And so even to this day, I can't donate blood because it was in the liver. Yeah. And so I survived. So the outfit went and made the invasion of southern France. So I didn't get back over there till, December, I guess it was. And they went over there in the latter part of August. So I missed a couple months of the combat. And then I get to Marseille, France, and then they shipped us back up to our units. And the war started all over again for me. But I did have a 3-month break in there. It wasn't very pleasant. Yeah. So I guess that's about it for Italy. Just glad to get out of there.
It seems like you're around for the Allied occupation of losing countries. What were you around for that?
Well, we only occupied in Germany, our outfit, yeah.
What was it like for the German people while you were there?
It wasn't too bad. It wasn't too bad. There were people that resented us, but we just carried on. Before I got on this baseball team, we were running patrols, everything on the Autobahn, mostly in Jeeps. We had vehicles and we did some training, in the areas, but then we mostly were out running patrols on the highways and different things. We might get called for something's happening in some place. We were like policemen. And then they changed the outfit after I went back, after I re-enlisted and went back. They changed all the outfits that were there to constabulary. That's what they called them. And so we took some training on how to do some police work or something, see. So there we had a lot of patrolling, and we'd go to different towns, different places, and set up, see how things were going. And we never had any problems. And nobody resented us that much. It was pretty good. Peacetime army.
So what would you say the public opinion of U.S. troops was in Germany?
Well, after the war, you mean, during peacetime?
Yeah, after the war.
I think most of them, well, there were some of those that resented, especially the soldiers that fought the war.
Yeah.
But most of the people were okay. And I even married one, but she wasn't she wasn't German, she was Slavish. Mm-hmm. She was a prisoner herself in Germany.
How'd you end up marrying her?
I met her at a dance when I was on a baseball team. Yeah, she could dance. And I grew up with the big bands, I was a dancer.
Question. Ask more about that. Yeah. Can you talk more about meeting your wife and?
Yeah, well, what happened? She was from Yugoslavia, and she'd finished high school, and she was just 17. And the Germans came to Yugoslavia, and they took off, took her whole village, killed all the adults, and killed all the animals, and they took all the youngsters with them back to Germany. She was 17 when she was a prisoner. They took them back to Germany and put them to work. But one thing saved her. They had foreign language in the high school. And she had her options. She could take German or English. And she said, I think I'll take English. And her friend said, no, it's easier to learn German than it is to learn English. And so she learned to speak German. She was fluent. She got to Germany, and these other women, they had to go and work in the fields and everything else, put them to work in the factories. They gave her a job in a children's home, orphanage, because she could speak German. And she said, I guess that probably maybe saved her life. But she always called me her liberator. And then after the war, they went to old Germany, and they had a big camp up there, a displaced persons camp, while they were waiting to ship them back. And I went to a dance one evening after baseball practice in Ulm, Germany. And I met her there in the dance, and she was a great dancer, so just hit it off, and we became friends. And about a year later, when they opened up the okay I got married.
It's a pretty big deal that she was in a labor camp.
Yeah.
Do you know information about what that was like?
Well, she said as far as the food and everything, she wasn't in a labor camp. She was in this orphanage, for the kids. And she said, but it was we got treated pretty well, because we were taking care of the kids and stuff like that. But we still had restrictions, on what we could do and what we couldn't do. And the food, of course, was rationed. We ate a lot of potatoes and black bread. But she said, I guess that's why I survived. So they brought them over there to put them in this displaced persons camp, but they were free. They could go any place they wanted. That was just a place where they could put them up, and feed them and everything while they were waiting to send them back to where they were coming from. So she didn't have to go back. And so that was, we had a good time. And the war ended in 45 and 47 when I came home. And that's, my daughter was born in Germany, in Bayreuth, Germany. Yeah. And that's Petra's grandmother.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not to sound intrusive, you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but did your wife end up losing her family?
Yeah, she lost all of her family. She had a sister that left home earlier, who got out of there, and she went to Italy, and she never heard from her again. She don't know what happened to her. And because the Germans were in Italy too, so. But anyway, her family, her mother and father died, I think, earlier. And she lived with her uncle, and they killed her uncle when they came in there. So it made her an orphan, more or less.
And what's her view towards the war? Is it similar to yours, or does she have her?
She hated the Germans. Probably till the day she died, she hated the Germans. And she had right here in the house, she had a stroke. Gee, when was that? She passed away in 1995, and she was in a nursing home for almost 10 years. She had strokes, and one time she was I was visiting her, and she was out. She hadn't said anything for about 3 or 4 days, and she was laying there in the bed, and all at once and they brought another lady in the bed next to her. She was there. Her daughter was there with her, and she was German, and her daughter was talking to her in German. And I was just sitting there, and all at once she sat straight up in the bed and she said, the Germans are here. And that was the first thing she said for months, And then after that she started talking. I said, don't worry about it, they're not here, they're going to hurt you. Germans. I said, no, that lady's very ill. So, but she was in there for a long time.
Would you say the war impacted her a lot?
Oh, yeah. And, but originally, after she had the first stroke, I had her home after a while, and she was in bed sleeping and napping in the afternoon, and she called, and I went right in, and I said, what's up? She said, the Germans are in the backyard, and they're digging a hole, they're going to put me in it. I said, you're going to be kidding. There's nobody out there. Yes, they are. I know they're there. I can hear them. Just something in her head. So I got her in a wheelchair, and I wheeled her out on the back porch out there, and I said, no, look, see, here's the whole yard. There's nobody there. It took me a while to get her calmed down. But it's things like that,
Mm-hmm.
So, she did not like the Germans. She didn't have too many German friends, even in the States. Yeah.
It's a pretty incredible story that she was able to make it out of there.
Yeah.
She calls you her liberator?
Yes.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah. So when I was re-enlisting that time, I said, I want to go to Europe. And I said, do you think you're ready for that? She said, well, maybe we can make it, So that's why I re-enlisted for Europe. But I got Hawaii instead, which was a lot happier. 4 years in Hawaii was really great. So, but anyway, we were married. Well, when she passed away, it was 6 months prior to our 50th wedding anniversary. So we had a good life.
It's good to hear.
Yeah.
Going back to life as a soldier, what were the people you worked with like?
Mostly, well, you run into guys that, didn't really want to be there. And I didn't notice it too much until I got up in the ranks. But then when I became a first sergeant, even while I was in Germany, I was acting first sergeant. And getting guys in the company that were, didn't want to be there, didn't want to be in the service, and waiting to get out and all this stuff. And then later on, well, when they didn't have a draft anymore, everybody enlisted. And so it wasn't too bad then, but you always had guys that were rebels, But there was a way to handle it, Yeah. And as a first sergeant, I always had platoon sergeants that were in charge, And very seldom they'd have to bring one to the orderly room, very seldom. They took care of themselves, Unless the guy was really rowdy, needed something more.
What were some of the opinions of the people you worked with on the war, on the Germans? Were they similar to yours as well?
Yeah, most of them. Yeah. When the war ended in Germany, I think all the combat troops were there. I think they were glad the war was over, and I didn't hear too many things going on with our troops getting in fights or anything with the Germans, or anything like that. They all took it pretty good, as far as I know. I didn't know of anything bad like that.
And you served in 3 different conflicts. Did you feel like you had the same sense of purpose in each one, or did it change from conflict to conflict?
The situations changed. See, I was still in the infantry. I went to Korea. I was the first sergeant of a rifle company, which to this day is probably the best job in the world. And it was just a different kind of tactics. We were fighting the Chinese, and the Chinese were not like the Germans. In Germany, we knew where they were, and they knew where we were, and we were going to go where they were, or they were going to come where we are. And we had tanks and all that. In Korea, they didn't have that. We had tanks, but they couldn't get up close enough. They had to stay back behind the hills. They weren't right up there leading the attacks or anything, And because they didn't have the roadways anyway. The tanks would get bogged down in a river someplace, and then they were dead meat, And it was altogether a different war. And well, when they interviewed me for that thing in Fairfield there, the guy asked me, what about the war in Korea? I said, it was not a good war. It was a bad war. And that was my opinion. And a lot of other people say the same thing. And the ones that were in World War II. And they compared Korea with World War II, and there was no comparison at all. Yeah. At least we were fighting the Germans, and we knew who they were. They knew who we were. They were in uniforms. We got to Korea, and you didn't know who were soldiers. Except Chinese were all they came in uniform, but the North Vietnamese, South Vietnamese, they just wore whatever they had, and that made it kind of tough, and different tactics altogether.
As a soldier in World War II, what was your proudest moment of the war?
Well, let's see. I'm trying to think.
Yeah, take your time.
I think probably going through Rome real early on. I said, wow, this is really something, to see that. And then, of course, when we crossed the Rhine River going into Germany from France, left France behind us going in there, I thought that was really great. And then, of course, when they said the war's over, that was the best one. But I made a lot of friends, and I don't think I made any enemies of our own people, and I thought we had a good life. Tough at times. Yeah.
And now I'm going to ask you the same question about Korea and Vietnam. What was your most proud moment?
Well, I guess Korea was. We were. I had a full rifle company. I was the first sergeant. Had a full rifle company, which was, well, with officers and EM. I guess we had almost 200 men, because we had been back in the rear area and we got replacements in, and then we moved up in a blocking position behind this unit that was on this hill. They called it Little Gibraltar or something, but it was 355 was a designation, and that was 355 meters high. It wasn't feet. That thing was way up there, you know. And so we were in a blocking position behind those troops up there, and we were just sitting back. We didn't even have any patrols. We had outposts out and everything, but we weren't even getting any artillery on us, you know. And it was Thanksgiving Day, 1951, and I got a call from the area where we fed the troops if we got a hot meal. And the mess sergeant called on the field phone, and he said, "Tom, we got the chow. Got your Thanksgiving dinner." I said, "Okay, I'll start sending them down." So I called all the platoon sergeants and start filtering your troops down. So they went down, few at a time. And I guess during this time, the Chinese attacked that big hill up there and run that outfit off of there, just ran them off. And the Chinese took the hill. So we get back up after the thing, back up to the area, and the company commander said, "We got to go to the battalion CP, which was a bunker, and we got to get orders. We're moving." I said, "I wonder where we're going." He said, "Well, I have an idea." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, 7th Infantry just got run off of that hill up there. Well, we were in the 15th Infantry, so we didn't like the 7th Infantry guys anyway. We have to block for them. We don't know our own troops. But they were all right, I guess. But anyway, we get over, and I called all the platoon sergeants and told them we got to go. So they and their platoon leaders, we went over to get the orders. And the major, we had a major for battalion commander, and the guy was really good. He was come up through the ranks, and second lieutenants and first lieutenant and a captain and the infantry officer, you know. And so he was a major, but he had the battalion. And usually it's a lieutenant colonel, the battalion commander, but, you know, short of troops, short of officers. Anyway, he was a great guy. And so he said, "Okay, here's the situation. The unit up on the hill 355 just got run off by the Chinese. Chinese took the hill. They've got it. And our latest commitment is going to take it back." And he starts talking, and this bird colonel walks in. And he said, "Oh, I understand you're the outfit that's going to go up on that 355. And the major said, "Yes, we are, Colonel. Why?" He said, "You shouldn't have any problem. There probably aren't 2 platoons of them up there." And that major was, he said, "Colonel, if there's only 2 platoons up there, how come they ran your whole outfit off of there?" And he said, up, and he left. Never said another word. So anyway, we got the word. We were going at 0400 up the back, and there was no trees, nothing left on it, because it had all kind of artillery from both ways, you know, nothing, just rocks and bunkers up on top. So we got the word, and they said, "F Company's leading." I said, "Well, naturally, best company in the battalion, we're going first." And so 0400, we crossed the line of departure and started up that hill. And it was dark. Man, it was dark. Couldn't see. Falling down in the rocks and everything, you know. And we get all the way up to the top of the hill, and I'm with the company commander. And the 3rd platoon was leading out. So this guy's name was Drummond. I called him Bulldog. He was the point man, you know. He got up on top and he says, "There ain't no Chinaman up here." And he looked, and there was a bunker. He looked in there, and there was eyes staring at him. And he fired his rifle into there, and then the whole hill exploded. And we fought them all day that day. And pulled all the platoons up and they went in. Fought them all day that day. And then at 4 o'clock that afternoon, E Company, who was supposed to have been behind us in the first place when we hit the hill, I don't know where they'd gone, but they finally got there. And they were up there now, and they were going to take over the hill, our positions. And so they took our positions. But like I was saying, I had a full company. I had almost 200 men and officers in the company. And but we were up there till like from 0500, 0600, something like that, to 1600 when E Company came up. And we pulled back and went to this area in maybe 500-600 meters behind. There were bunkers in there, that were being used before. There was nobody in them now. So we got back to there, and the company commander said, okay, we're holding them up here. So each platoon got a bunker. And they got inside. I said, just get in there and just stay there till we see what's happening, because I'm sure we're going off the line. Because we were shot up. I knew we were shot up pretty bad. So the company commander said, well, I guess we better make a head count. I said, I'll go get it. And he said, oh, okay, go ahead. And so I went around to each bunker, and I got a head count. And it was amazing. We didn't have hardly anybody left. And I got back to him and I said, Lieutenant, I said, no ammo, very little ammo left. They need ammo, they need rations. We ain't had nothing to eat since that supposed Thanksgiving breakfast we had over there, whatever it was. And I said, but we need ammo and we need food. And I said, so we're probably going back. We know that we're going to go back. We got to go back and reorganize. We need troops. And so I came in and I told him, I said, I just made a head count. We got 78 men left. That's all we got. And no officers other than you. So the platoon leaders were gone. Fortunately, we had all the platoon sergeants. So waiting on the orders, what we were going to do, this little second lieutenant, I'll never forget him, little skinny guy, second lieutenant, Dustin, that's his name. He comes up and he said, I got your orders. He was from battalion S2, intelligence section. And I said, well, how far back we going? You got us set up back there? He said, you're not going back. And I said, well, get in the CP here. Here's the lieutenants in there. So he went in there and I went in behind him. Lieutenant Hazeltine said, hey, Dusty, where are we going? He said, back up. He said, back up? What do you mean? He said, there's a gap between E Company where they start coming off the hill on the right side. There's a gap from there all the way over to the 7th Infantry, who was the ones that got run off the hill, their outfit, have about 1,000 meters, and there's no troops in there. So you got to go up there and man that thing. And I said, we don't have any ammo. We don't have any chow. He said, I know, but we'll get some ammo up to you. Get it up there right away. And so he left. So company commander said, well, guess we got to go. So he checked it on the map, so we're going to do. And he said, I'll lead out with the 2nd platoon. And that was my buddy Batson. He and I joined the unit at the same time. And he was 2nd platoon sergeant. He's the guy I go and see every year over in Springfield, Missouri. And I went and I said, Batson, you're leading out. He said, where are we going? I said, up on that ridge line over there. There's no American troops over there. We got to man that thing. And he said, okay. So he got his guys out of the bunker, and the company commander came out, and he let them out. And I said, I'll get them all out of here. So I stayed there. And then after Batson got out, I sent out the next platoon, and the weapons, and the 3rd platoon was the last one, was in the bunkers. And I got them out and got them through. And we had 2 barbed wire entanglements there, but they had to go through. There was a safe lane through them. And it was tricky. And then Chinese was sitting up with 120 mortars just waiting for something to shoot at. And then they started firing those mortar rounds in. And so we moved quickly, and I figured everybody was out. And I said, well, I'm going to go check all the bunkers just to make sure. And went back, and I found one guy in there that wouldn't move. He was sitting there shaking. I said, come on, man, get out of here. You're going to get killed. You're going to get killed in here. I said, them 120s are going to start falling on these bunkers any minute. You see all the troops moving. And he said, I can't go, Top. I can't go. I said, well, I'll tell you what. I'm going. If you're going to stay here, you're going to stay here and probably die. So I'll probably never see you again. And I started out of a bunker, and a 120 mortar fell about 6 yards in front of me. But I wasn't all the way out. My head was just up out of the bunker, and it knocked me back in the bunker. And I said, man, oh man, I got to get out of here. And I said, are you going? Can't go. I can't go. I said, stay. I'm going. So I got out of there and I got across. By then they were already across. There wasn't anybody between me and them. And so I'm going across that field, double timing, and I could hear the shrapnel flying through the air. You know, mortar rounds going overhead, going back on that. And so I get over to the company commander, where he had a CP, and I said, okay, what was the situation? He said, each platoon's got a bunker, and they're scattered up there. And what few men they've got, few fighting holes, and just very little ammo. And I said, well,
Sorry about that.
So anyway, I said, well, if they come here, they're going to go all the way to Busan, and the only way we can stop them. And fortunately, nothing happened. They didn't come ever. They were giving it all to E Company up on top of the hill, and nothing happened down there. Good thing we didn't have any ammo, but what we did have, it started snowing. And we were up there with no jackets, nothing. All our equipment was back where we first started. And so I said to the company commander, I said, okay, Lieutenant, you can have this CP, you and your radio operator. I'm going up there and get Batson, and we're going to walk the line. I'm not going to have frozen feet. I'm going to keep moving. And so I went up and got Batson. I said, let's go, Denzel. We're going to walk the line. So we did. We just walked back and forth all night. Once in a while, we jump in a bunker. They have a little canned heat going or something, get in there and warm your hands up. And we just did that all night. And so it quit snowing, got daylight, and I kept looking over, where is our ammo? Where is our chow? Nothing's happened. We didn't get anything. And about 3 that afternoon, here come the outfit from the 7th Regiment to relieve us in that position. And we pulled back, got out of there, and they had trucks waiting, and they took us back to the rear area. And so we got all encamped in there, and I said, the company, and my clerk was in a tent. He had a little tent. He was on a typewriter, and he was typing up wounded in action, killed in action, all the reports that he had. And so I got a call from the medics. And I said, Top, you got to come over here. We need you. I said, what do you need me for? He said, you got to identify some people. I said, you got to be kidding. Don't they have dog tags? Well, some of them do, but we got to have a facial identification of them. And I said, you got to be kidding me. I said, okay. So I went and got Batson. I said, you got to go with me. I can't go over there by myself. So we got over there, and here's these bodies laying there with ponchos on them, 38 of them, all my troops. And that was pretty tough. Still today, I remember that. So anyway, when this is all over, I get back to the company area, and here's this guy that I left up there in that bunker. Hey, First Sergeant, how you doing? I said, what are you doing here? And he said, well, after it was over up there, I just came back here and waited. I said, not any longer. You're not in this company anymore. Go find a new home. And I never saw him again. And I went in and told the company clerk, I said, transfer him to G Company. So, but I was going to have him in there because everybody knew about it. And he probably wouldn't have lived a week if he'd have stayed there. Somebody would have got him. So anyway, for all this this stuff, I think that part at the aid station was probably the worst. It was the worst. But anyway, the company commander put me in for the Silver Star for staying back and getting all the troops out of there. And they downgraded it to a Bronze Star with a V for valor because they said I was acting under orders. You know, it wasn't something I volunteered for. Well, actually I did because I told him, I said, okay, I'll stay here and get everybody out. But they downgraded it. I said, that's all right, no problem. Didn't make any difference in pay, you know. So, but that, I think that was a highlight, yeah. And I see Batson every year. I go back, I go back to Illinois and have a high school reunion. We just had our 71st this past September.
Wow.
And then I stop on the way back, go to Springfield, Missouri, and see Denzel, and he has a bunch of guys. We have a little reunion of our own. Some of them are still out of my company, still call me their first sergeant. So that's good friends, and I always got them. But that was different, and probably sticks more in my head than anything. And of course, Vietnam was altogether different. Altogether different war. It was just the first time I went. Of course, we didn't have any troops there yet, and I went as advisors. And these advisors, the sergeants and lieutenants, were going out with their infantry battalion as in advisors, and they didn't do anything they told them anyway. You know, they just went along, and I only lost one guy out of that. One guy was killed, and one of the sergeants got shot, but we didn't have any other casualties out of the advisors. But I think it was a wasted year. But anyway, I got to meet the big general. Can't even think of his name now. Yeah, big guy.
Oh. Yeah. Would you like to display your Bronze Star on the camera?
Well, yeah, I'll show you the. This is the citation. I don't have the medal right here, but that's the citation for the.
Wrong.
Zoom.
Thanks. There you go. All right, it's on camera.
Okay.
All right, that's good.
Okay.
Thanks for sharing that.
I got 4 Bronze Stars, but only one for valor. So, but if you want to see the medal, I have to go get it out. It's in there, in my war room in there.
Is it on your uniform or is it large?
There's one on my uniform, but it's just the V with the ribbon.
Let's stop for a moment and have Mr. Hunter get those items, and we'll get those on camera too.
The ribbon up here.
Give us
And,
You got it, Justin?
One sec.
I can sit down again.
Yeah, sure. That'd be great.
May not be able to get up again.
I'll help you.
It's all right. All right, let's get that medal.
I'll put it in here.
And would you describe what it is on the camera? So.
Oh, this is the Bronze Star with the V device for valor, and I have actually 4 awards of the Bronze Star, but the other 3 are for meritorious service. Just the one for valor.
And what was the date that was awarded?
Let's see. I think it was. I was thinking, I said, well, I didn't get it till after I got back to the States. But the day of the action was it was the 26th of November, 1951. That's when the action happened.
Today's the 26th of November.
Yeah, that's right. Wow, that's great.
Yeah. That's fine. Alright. Do you ever feel doubtful, worried, or scared during your combat experiences?
Oh yeah, yeah. You feel maybe not scared, but concerned. You know. Yeah. We had one situation in France. We were on. There was a big open area, big open field, and we were on one side, and the Germans were way on the other side, and we had already got the word that we were going to attack, and we were going to have to go across this about 500 meters of open ground, and we're all ready to go. Started to climb out of the holes, and the Germans came out of the holes coming after us. We didn't have to attack them. They were like shooting ducks. And artillery started falling on them, everything, and just beat them back. So we didn't have to go across. But that's kind of anxious, getting ready to get out of the hole, and then there they are. So something like that. That's. But no, I don't know. I don't remember being really concerned, you know, that I wouldn't survive. So I'm leaving this on now.
Yeah, unless you're more comfortable taking it off. Yeah?
She gave him a break. to
Yeah,
take
no
it
problem.
You want to know what it looks like? There.
That's alright.
Oops.
It's alright. Alright. So, you've been through 3 different conflicts. Are there any conclusions or reflections you're able to come with about your experiences? Anything that stuck with you?
Well, it was my life, and I can't say I enjoyed every minute of it, but can't say I enjoyed every minute of it, but I would say the majority of it was great. I really enjoyed the military, and made a lot of good friends. Met a few people that didn't see my way, but you know, most of them were okay. I never had any problems with NCOs or any officers that I know of. You know, so always got along pretty good. Do your job. That's it.
You talk about going to visit your friend every year. What's that like for you?
Oh, that's terrific. Yeah, I talked to him a lot on the phone and everything. And see, I hadn't seen him for quite a while. And they had a ceremony out here at the base one time honoring the 3rd Infantry Division, because they had processed through there when they went to Korea. And a lot of them came back through there, through the hospital. So they were setting up a special place in the museum for the 3rd Infantry Division. And I found out about it. And I said, gee, wonder what happened. So I called him out there, and that guy said, I don't know anything about it. There's a retired colonel in San Francisco. He's handling it. I said, give me his number. So he gave me his number. I called him. He said, oh, yeah, you interested? I said, yeah, I want to know when it is and what's happening. I said, I want to be there. And he said, okay. He said, have you read this book that we called it War? Was written about the Korean War by a guy named Denzel Batson. I said, who? He said, Denzel Batson. I said, you're kidding me. I said, I've been looking for the guy for 30 years almost. I didn't know where he was. I knew he was from Missouri, but that's all I knew. And so he said, yeah, he wrote this book, and we called it War, and it's got everything in there about his unit. And I said, it was my unit, our unit. And he said, well, you trying to get you. I said, yeah, because I want to find a guy. And of course, I got married again, and my wife was a computer tech in there. You know, she was doing everything. I said, Catherine, find out about a book. We call it War, written by Batson. I don't know who she called. Wherever you call for get information like that. And she. About 10 minutes, she said, here it is. Here's his address and his phone number. So it was a Sunday morning, and so I called him. I said, well, let's see, difference in time, a couple hours between here and Missouri. So I called when I figured he was probably around about 11 o'clock, you know. And so I called him up. And Ava answered the phone, his wife, who I met later on. I didn't know her then. And I said, is this the Batson home? She said, yes, it is. I said, well, is Denzel there? She said, yeah, he's in. He's talking to some friends of his right now. I said, well, I need to talk to him right now. She said, oh, okay. He came to the phone. I said, Batson, get your platoon ready. You're going out on a patrol. He said, Hunter, where the hell are you? So we got together. So then I started going every time I go back, stop by and see him, and he's really a great friend, really great friend. So that's how I found Batson. Otherwise, I wouldn't have met him. But then I got a 3rd Division history book now, and it's got excerpts in there, and he's in there. He's in there with his picture and stuff, you know, little blurb in there. I got one in there, and so anyway, that's good. And a lot of those guys, the guys that was in our company from Nebraska, Indiana, Illinois, and Wisconsin, and Texas, and he invites all of them guys to come when I'm going. So they're all still calling me their first sergeant, you know. I said, I got promoted, guys. No, you're first sergeant. So.
What was life like readjusting back to civilian life after each war?
Well, I didn't go to civilian life after each war.
Mm-hmm.
I just went from one war to the next, but it was peacetime. Peacetime was, you know, it was okay. I came back from Europe with the family, of course, and I had to leave. And then when the leave was over, I had to report into Colorado. The first time I went to Colorado. And that was in 47. So in 51, I went to Korea. So we were adjusting, you know, to having the family on the base and all this stuff. You know, I had military quarters, never had that before. So it was a little different getting organized, you know, and realizing that I had a family to take care of, plus I had my job that I was doing. And so then...
All right. So what is your outlook on World War II? Was it good or bad? Was it necessary or unnecessary? Or what are your thoughts?
Oh, yeah, it was necessary. I mean, Germany was about to take over the world. And then when they made friends with Japan, and then we were getting it from 2 different directions. And then Pearl Harbor happened, and it was really necessary. Yeah, it wasn't I was really not upset, but really surprised at the way they were treating the guys when they came home from Vietnam. Everybody figured that wasn't a war. It shouldn't have been a war. And but the guys that went, You know, they really, even today, you see Vietnam vets, and they stick together, little groups here and there. You know, unless you get friendly with them or something. They resented that, coming home to that. It didn't bother me because I came home and went right back to Fort Ord, you know, and flew into Travis, and my wife was waiting for me in the car, and got in the car and went back to our home in Seaside, you know, and then reported for duty at the end of my leave, just like being on leave or something, you know. But they did. Some of the guys had some real bad experiences when they came back. So, and then of course while we were there was all these protests and everything going on. People were actually, you know, really protesting badly, and people were dying and everything in those riots and stuff they were having. So I guess Vietnam was probably not a good war for anybody, civilians or military. And then what was bad about it too was the drugs. Man, I guess that really exploded, you know. Young kids were coming over there, and they found a way to get hold of drugs. There was a lot of drug use over there, and especially them guys were stuck out in the jungle someplace, you know. And so it was not a good war. It was worse than Korea, much worse. Yeah.
Any other suggestions?
Oh yeah, that general, I remember his name now, was Westmoreland.
Oh.
That's who I met over there when I went over the first time.
All right, we don't have any more questions, but is there anything that you'd like to add that you didn't talk about yet?
Oh, I think we pretty well covered it. Yeah. But I got to give a lot of credit to my wife for those first 50 years that we were married. Real military wife. I don't even know anybody now that if I look and see, well, what would she do? You know, how would she work out? And I just can't see it, but boy, she was great. Yeah, she was really great. Took care of the kids, and Jim, the baby, was only 5 months old when I went to Korea. And I had to take her back to Illinois, where my family was, and because she really wasn't that accustomed to American life either, you know. And so I took her back there, and lo and behold, and I was there in the winter, and that was the coldest winter they had in Illinois for 25 years. And she had this house, it wasn't heated, you know, it was just a potbelly stove. And so when I got home, she said, never again will you leave me in Illinois, winter or summer, you know. So, but she went with me every place, you know. She just said, I said, I got my orders. Okay, when we're leaving, start packing, you know, just like that. I saying, well, can you get out of it? Do we have to leave? Well, that was just saddle up and mow. And I guess her best trip was that 4 years in Hawaii. She really loved that.
Yeah.
That was all vacation for her and the kids, you know. And of course, it was half a vacation for me, I guess.
What do you think gave her the ability to be able to support you so much?
I don't know. I mean, she had so bad a life early on, you know, and because even when she was growing up, you know, they had a lot of stuff going on in Yugoslavia at that time, you know, and everything, and they didn't have hardly anything. It was a small village outside of Zagreb, and her father was a farmer, you know, and so she really knew what bad life could be, I guess, you know, and but she was really real faithful, real good mother, and the kids always still talk about her, and yeah. Just, well, I wonder if Mom would do that. I said, oh yeah, she probably would. Yeah, she's been gone a long time now. She died in 1995.
Did you participate in the honor flight?
Yeah, I just got back from that.
And what did that mean to you?
Oh, that was terrific.
Yeah.
That was terrific. I met people there, and I didn't know any of them, but I got to know them, and it was a great bunch of guys. They were all World War II vets. An amazing one, there was a female on there. And I said, who is she? She was a pilot for the ferry planes. You know, when they didn't have any pilots here, they were all at the war, so they had this group of women, and they used to fly those new airplanes right off the assembly line, fly them over to England, and then come back, and then you take another one over. And I forgot what they called that. You know,
Those the Waves?
I don't think it was the Waves. Waves was Navy. Yeah, I think these were all Air Force. And I don't know what they called them for sure, but she was there, and she was 93 years old. And she was in good shape. And half of these guys, you know, when we made the rounds to all the museums, they were in wheelchairs. They weren't in wheelchairs there all the time, but they had a long way to walk around, especially at World War II museum. It took you an hour to get over on that one. And so I didn't wait for any of them, you know. I said, I ain't waiting, I'm going, I'm walking. I'd take off, and I'd see her and the lady that was in charge of our group, her and her husband, and she would stay with her. And they just go walking around every place, you know. And so after Saturday, after we saw everything, we went out early, 8:30 in the morning, and we were out till like 5 o'clock in the evening. But we got to see everything. We went to the
All right. We'd like to thank you for participating in this a lot, and thanks for telling your story to us, and thank you for your service in the military
It's
as well.
my pleasure,
Yeah.
all of it. Yeah. And I enjoy talking about the service. Not too many soldiers. I don't see too many Army guys out on the base, but every time I see one, I grab him. I say, how come they let you guys off today? What are you doing here? And then they say, oh, because I wear a cap, and I got a cap, and it's got the Sergeant Major's pin on it. Sergeant Major, oh, hi, how you doing? And so I get in a lot of conversations with them. And I said, man, you guys get treated well out here? I said, I'm a friend of the base Sergeant Major and Chief. And he told me that if anybody give me any trouble, I called him. So you guys having any problem? No, we're okay. So it's good.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, you're welcome. It's my pleasure.
Thank you, Mr. Hay.
Yeah.